Hey guys, so for today's video I'm going to be doing some tortoise shell nails, or at least I'm going to be trying to do some tortoise shell nails. I have never done tortoise shell nails before, and to be quite honest, I really don't like the design. I just don't like the tortoise shell design in general, whether it's on nails or like glasses or jewelry or whatever the tortoiseshell pattern or design can go on. I just don't really like how it looks. It's not my personal favorite, but it is super trendy right now, and if I'm being completely honest, I really didn't have very many ideas for fall nails. I have mentioned before, like, I'm not a huge fan of fall nails. I also don't really have very many ideas when it comes to fall nails because I feel like everything's been done before and it's basically the same thing all the time with fall nails. So I thought this was something different, and like I said, it is super trendy right now, so I wanted to see, if I could do the tortoiseshell design, because it looks like it's super easy, but as we all know, sometimes those super easy designs are not as easy as they look. But anyhow, to start off, I'm just painting the bases. I started with Troll Doll from NAILZ by Dev, which is a jelly orange color, and then once I got 4 done, I was like, I wonder what it would look like if I did a yellow base instead of an orange base. So I took Totally BUGGIN from NAILZ by Dev and painted the thumbnail with that. And then for the rest of the design, I pulled out my Born Pretty blooming gel, the black from Ballpit, and whatever that brown color was from Ballpit. I forgot what brown I used. So I'm just going in and applying the blooming gel onto this nail first. What is that? That's Brownie batter from Ballpit. I did end up using a different brown, I think, later on. But anyhow, I just took that Born Pretty blooming gel, applied it to the nail. I did a thin coat of it, and now I'm just taking the brush straight from the bottle and doing some little dabs on the nail, sitting there and waiting for it to bloom out. And honestly, it was not blooming like very much at all. It bloomed a little bit, but not as much as it usually, or I shouldn't say usually, because it wasn't blooming out as much as it was when I first got it. Like, I feel like this Born Pretty blooming gel is not working as well anymore, and it's really not that old. So I didn't really know what was going on with that. I let the brown bloom out a little bit, which it really didn't bloom out very much at all. And then I decided, well, maybe if I just do the brown on top, it'll help spread it out some more, or the black on top, it would help spread it out some more. And it really wasn't doing much of anything at all. You can see I'm just sitting here waiting and watching it, and it just wasn't working. So I remembered I had a Beetles blooming gel, so I wiped that nail off and then pulled out the Beetles blooming gel, applied that because I wanted to see if this would work better in terms of blooming, because like I said, that Born Pretty one was just not working very well. And I remember when I first got it, it worked a lot better than it was in this video, like when I tested it out here. And so after applying the Beetles, I went back in with the brown, did some spots around the nail, and it did bloom out more than it did with the Born Pretty blooming gel, but it still didn't bloom out as much as I know that the Beetles blooming gel works. But also, the Beetles blooming gel is really old. I've had it for several years. I can't remember exactly when I got it. I'm pretty sure I got it before I even started filming YouTube videos. I might have got it like at the very beginning of my channel even. So it's at least 3 years old, potentially even older. Whereas the Born Pretty one is only about at most a year, because they sent it to me either at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. I can't really remember. So I don't know. Neither one of them were working very well, but the Beatles one was working a whole lot better. And then after I got the spots on, I cured them for 60 seconds because they just weren't going to bloom anymore, and I didn't really know what else to do, so I just cured those on. And then I went in with the sketching gel from Ballpit, which is a jelly brown color. It's kind of like an orangey brown, and I applied that on top of the nail and then cured it for 60 seconds. And as I was curing that jelly brown on top of that other one, I moved on to the ring nail to do the other nail. I don't know why I did it like this, but I did. I think I was just trying to get it done, and I was like, oh, if I work on another nail as I'm curing one nail, I can get it done faster. But anyhow, I applied the blooming gel, the Beatles blooming gel, and then I pulled out a different brown. I think that was Fudge Pop from Ballpit, and I used that because I wasn't really a huge fan of the brown that I had used on that first nail. I felt like it wasn't dark enough, so I pulled out a darker brown and then dotted that on, and then did the black in the middle. Because I had real quick watched a tutorial on Instagram, and this is how the person in the video did it. They did an orange base, and then they did the blooming gel, they put the brown down, and then they put the black on top of the brown, let it bloom out, cured it, and then did a jelly brown on top of it. So I was just doing whatever they did because, like I said, I've never done this before. I didn't really know how to go about doing this design. So I just looked up real quick on Instagram, tortoiseshell nails, and I just watched the first one that came up, and that's how they did it. So that's what I'm doing. So I wasn't really liking how those first two nails were looking. So on this third nail, as that other one was curing, this one here, I am jumping back and forth, and this was a hot mess. Like watching it here for a video, watching me jump back and forth between these nails, such a hot mess. So I did those spots a little bit differently, and I kind of like smushed them around a little more instead of just making them like circle dots, you know, to kind of help feather it out a little bit. And I liked how that looked a lot better than the other ones. That last clip was me just applying that sketching gel on top. I also wasn't a huge fan of the sketching gel on top because I didn't like the color that it was turning the nails. It was honestly looking way too orangey for what I was liking. And it worked and it looked like tortoiseshell, but I don't know. I didn't like how orange it was looking. But anyhow, so for this nail, I did the blooming gel, I did the brown, and then I cured it, and then I did another layer of blooming gel and did the black on top, and did the same where I like smushed it around to kind of help feather out a little bit. And I felt like that was working a lot better and looking a lot better than those first two nails I did. And then after I cured that layer, I added on the sketching gel on top and then cured that. And since I liked how that looked a lot better, that's the way that I ended up doing with the different layers, instead of doing this blooming gel and then the brown and the black on that same layer of blooming gel. And since I liked how that one looked a lot better, I decided to pull out the Born Pretty blooming gel again to see if I could get it to work with this other way that I was doing it. I hope all of this is making sense, because like I said, it's jumping around a lot and I'm going back and forth between the nails. I think for these last two nails, I did them separately. I don't know. Like I said, I think I was just trying to get this done as quickly as possible, and it ended up being a really confusing video. I mean, it's not, I shouldn't say it's not so confusing, because it low-key is really confusing. So anyhow, I laid down the, which one was this? The Born Pretty Blooming Gel. Now I'm taking that brown and dabbing it onto the nail, and like I said, I'm kind of like smushing it onto the nail to help it spread out and look more feathered instead of like those perfect little circles that were on those first two nails, because I felt like this was giving more of like that tortoise shell kind of look versus on those first two nails. Let that sit to see if it was going to bloom out a little more. I think I left it. Yeah, I did leave it. I did leave the Born Pretty Blooming Gel. I cured that for 60 seconds. Then I went in with a second layer of blooming gel, and now I'm just going in with the black and doing the same thing, dabbing it kind of on the nail. I did like little smaller dots on the brown parts because I didn't want like the black to take over the brown, and I'm just kind of trying to help it like feather out a little more and look a little more splotchy and not so circly. And I let that sit and bloom out, and then I cured that for 60 seconds, added on the sketching gel on top, cured that for 60 seconds. I still wasn't liking how little it was blooming with the Born Pretty Blooming Gel. I did feel like the Beetles Blooming Gel was working just a tad bit more than the Born Pretty one. It wasn't working a whole lot better, but it was working a little bit better and was blooming a little bit more than the Born Pretty one was. So I did go back to that for this yellow one, and again I did the yellow to kind of see like how different it would look if I did a yellow base compared to an orange base, because like I said, the video that I watched, she did an orange base for her tortoise shell, and I was like, I wonder how different it was going to be, because I know that the sketching gel is a jelly brown color, but it is like an orangey brown color. It has a very strong orange undertone, so it's not like a pure brown kind of color. And I wanted to see how that would affect, like what kind of effect that would have over the yellow versus the orange. And like I said, I wasn't really a huge fan of the way the orange based nails were looking. They were looking way too orange for what I wanted. I wanted more of a like brown kind of tortoise shell design, because I've seen all different kinds of variations when it comes to tortoise shells. Like I've seen the ones that look more orange, I've seen ones that look more red, I've seen ones that look more yellow. So like you can, you know, kind of do this however you want and like have different variations. But I just wanted to see, I was testing it out, and yeah, I didn't really like it with the orange base and like with the jelly brown that I was using, because it was super orange. It just made it in the end look really orange, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. I wanted kind of more of a brown-ish shade of tortoise shell, if that makes any sense. But one thing I did notice, after I got the brown on and let it bloom out a little bit, I was like, oh, this looks like a giraffe pattern right here. So if you want to do a giraffe design, just take a yellow base, whether it be a jelly base or a cream base, and then apply some blooming gel onto that, and then take your brown and dab that on, and you have a quick and easy giraffe pattern, which I think was really cool. And I was really liking how it looked before I added the black on, because it was that kind of like giraffe pattern. I'm like, that's really neat. But anyhow, after I got the brown layer cured, I did another layer of blooming gel, and then I did the black, let that sit and bloom out a little bit, and then cured that for 60 seconds, and then went in with the sketching gel and applied that on top. And I actually really liked how this one looked the most. It actually ended up being exactly how I wanted my tortoise shell to end up looking compared to the other ones. I know it's a little hard to see the difference right now, but you will be able to see the difference once I show them all together and like in my finishing shots, like the difference between the orange base and the yellow base. But after I got that nail completely cured, I'm just going in with my shiny top coat from LGN and applying that to all of the nails. And once I get that applied, I do go ahead and cure for 60 seconds. And I do just want to real quick apologize for all the jumping around that was going on in the video. Like I said, I think I was just trying to get this done real quick. As you can see, this is a really quick video. It's only 19 minutes long. This design honestly is a quick design to do anyhow, but then also with like the jumping around and like doing like a nail as I'm curing another nail, it got a little confusing and it was a little all over the place. So I'm not gonna do that again unless it makes sense to like jump around like that. But for something like this where I'm just doing the same design on each nail, I will make sure to go in order like I usually do. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea to jump around like that, but now seeing it like after editing it and doing the voiceover and everything, I'm like, oh my god, that was not the right thing to do. That was a terrible move on my part. So I do apologize if things were a little confusing and all over the place. I promise it won't happen again. And this is the finished result. They're all right. I'm not a huge fan of them. Like, I think the reason why I don't really care for them so much is because I don't really like the tortoise shell design. So I'm just like, they're all right. I mean, for the tortoise shell design itself, I think they're pretty decent, especially the thumbnail. By the time I got to the thumbnail, I knew what I was doing and like how to make it look good compared to these first two nails. They're kind of a hot mess. But yeah, I think overall they're not too bad for my first try at tortoise shell nails. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of this design, so I don't really care too much for these nails anyway. I do low-key kind of want to try this design out again, but do a little more testing and experimenting to see if I can get like that more orangey brown kind of color that I was looking for, and it be less yellow and less orange like these ones are. But like I said, the yellow based one is my personal favorite out of all of them, because this orange one is just too orange and they look even worse in the sunlight here. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.